The SEAL training camp blazed under the scorching sun. A female recruit bent down to tie her boots, her short sleeves rolled up, revealing a small tattoo on her left wrist. The young soldiers around her burst into laughter. "Cheap ink, looks like mall trash," one guy mocked. "What do you think this is, yoga class?" The woman stayed silent, pulled her sleeve back down, eyes straight ahead. The tattoo showed only a few small black characters, faded with time. Right then, the commander stopped walking, his eyes locked on her wrist. He stepped slowly toward her. Everything froze. Type respect if you believe honor can be silent. Her name was Helena Blackwood, 27 years old, tall and lean, hair pulled back tight. She spoke only when necessary. She'd grown up in a rundown house next to the Naval Air Station. Her father fixed military aircraft engines, grease under his fingernails, stories of planes that never made it home heavy in his voice. Helena had watched those planes take off her entire childhood, watched some come back damaged, watched others never come back at all. "You're not built for this world, sweetheart," her father used to say. "You're too quiet, too gentle." Maybe that's why she enlisted, to prove she wasn't the weak kid who hid behind her father's toolbox, to prove she could stand in the fire without breaking. But the SEAL training environment was a different kind of fire. The other recruits saw her as a quota, the diversity hire, the woman taking up a slot that should belong to a man. "She won't last 3 weeks," she'd overheard Instructor LeClaire tell another trainer. "They never do." Some of the male recruits were worse. They'd make comments just loud enough for her to hear questions about whether she was really tough enough, whether she'd fold the first time things got serious. Helena kept her mouth shut and her sleeve long. Always long sleeves, even in the brutal California heat, even when sweat soaked through her uniform and made the fabric stick to her skin like a second layer. Because underneath that fabric, on her left wrist, was a tattoo that told a story she wasn't ready to share. It wasn't pretty, wasn't artistic, just a few small black characters in simple block lettering. The kind of ink that looked homemade, rough around the edges, faded from years of exposure. Most people would look at it and see exactly what her fellow recruits saw. Cheap tattoo work, something a kid might get behind their parents' back. They had no idea what those characters meant. No idea that they represented something the military had quietly erased from official records. The stakes were simple and brutal. If she quit, every sneer and dismissive comment would be proven right. She'd become another statistic, another woman who thought she could handle the pressure but folded when reality hit. If she stayed but continued to be seen as weak, she'd spend whatever career she managed to build being treated as less than the woman who barely scraped by, who was carried by her team instead of contributing. Either way, she lost. But quitting wasn't an option, not with her father's voice echoing in her memory, not with the weight of proving that quiet strength could be just as valuable as loud confidence. The endurance training day changed everything. High-intensity obstacles, rope climbing, combat simulations in full gear under the desert sun, the kind of training designed to break people down and see what remained. Helena pushed through each station methodically. Not the fastest, not the strongest, but steady, relentless. Halfway through the rope climb, her long sleeves became a liability. The fabric caught on the rough rope, slipped against her sweaty palms. She was losing her grip. The choice was simple: let go and fail, or roll up her sleeves and climb. She rolled up her sleeves. The tattoo was visible to everyone, now small black characters stark against her pale wrist. No hiding it, no covering it up. The mockery started immediately. "Look at mall girls' ink. Did you get that at a strip mall? What's next?" a tramp stamp. But Helena kept climbing, reached the top, rang the bell, slid back down the rope with her sleeves still pushed up and her tattoo on full display. She was done hiding. What she didn't know was that someone in the crowd had recognized what he was seeing, someone who understood exactly what those faded characters meant. The male recruits circled like sharks smelling blood. "Hey, sticker girl," called out Jonas Moreau, a 22-year-old from Texas who thought volume could substitute for intelligence. "What's that supposed to be? Chinese takeout menu?" Laughter rippled through the group, the kind of cruel laughter that feeds on itself, growing louder with each voice that joins in. Another recruit, Dante Colombo, pulled out his phone. "This is going on the group chat. Mall Girls Mystery Inc. Bet it says something deep like live, laugh, love." Helena finished coiling the rope from her climb, methodical, precise. Her face showed nothing, but her jaw was set like concrete. "Come on, Helena. Moreau pushed closer, his voice dripping with fake friendliness. Share with the class. What's your little tattoo say? Some inspirational Pinterest quote? She started walking toward the next station. The recruits followed. Bet it's not even real, someone called from the back. Probably one of those temporary ones wash off in the shower. That's when Moreau made his mistake. He grabbed her wrist. Let's get a better look at this masterpiece, he said, yanking her arm up for everyone to see. The tattoo was small, maybe 2 inches across. Simple block letters that looked like they'd been done by someone who knew what they were doing but had to work fast. The ink was faded but still clear enough to read. Reaper 7 asterisk. Below that in smaller text. Kia 2019 asterisk. Moreau squinted at the letters. Reaper 7? What kind of edgelord bullshit is that? You get that from a video game? The laughter reached its peak. Phones came out. Someone started live streaming to the recruit barracks group chat. Comments flooded in from other trainees who weren't even there. Gamer girl thinks she's hardcore. Probably never held a real weapon. Reaper 7 sounds like a Call of Duty clan. Asterisk Helena pulled her arm free from Moreau's grip, still silent, still walking, but something in her eyes had changed a hardness that hadn't been there before. The instructors watched from a distance. This was part of the process. See who breaks under social pressure. See who fights back. See who disappears into themselves. Helena did none of those things. She just kept moving. At the next training station, Moreau wasn't done. He positioned himself next to her during the briefing, voice low enough that the instructors couldn't hear. So, what's the story, Reaper 7? Your gaming guild get wiped out by some 1-2-year-olds? A few other recruits snickered. The joke was catching on. Reaper 7 was becoming her nickname not in respect, in mockery. Helena loaded her rifle for the marksmanship exercise, checked her sight picture, controlled her breathing exactly like she'd been taught. Moreau kept talking. I bet you don't even know what Kaya stands for. Killed in action, sweetheart. But I guess in your video games, they just respawn, right? She fired. Perfect center mass, reloaded, fired again, another perfect shot. Probably got that tattoo to impress some military guy you were dating, Moreau continued, encouraged by the smiles from other recruits. Wanted to look tough for her soldier boyfriend. Third shot, dead center. Betty dumped her when he realized she was all ink and no substance. Fourth shot, still perfect. Moreau was getting frustrated. His audience was losing interest. Helena's refusal to react was making him look desperate, so he escalated. You know what I think? He said, loud enough now that the instructors could hear. I think that tattoo is stolen valor. I think you put some dead soldier's name on your body to make yourself feel important. The range went quiet. Stolen valor was serious, claiming credit for military service or honors you didn't earn. It was more than an insult. It was an accusation that could end careers before they started. Every recruit on the line stopped shooting. The instructor stepped closer. This had crossed from hazing into something that required official attention. Helena set down her rifle, slowly turned to face Moreau. For the first time since the mockery started, she spoke. You don't know what you're talking about. Her voice was steady, quiet, dangerous. Moreau grinned. He'd finally gotten a reaction. Then enlighten us, Reaper 7. Tell us all about your heroic military service. What unit were you in? What battles did you fight? The crowd pressed closer. Even the instructors were listening now. I've never served, Helena said simply. Moreau's grin widened. So, it is stolen valor. You put someone else's... It's my uncle's call sign. The words fell into the silence like stones into deep water. He was Staff Sergeant Maxwell Blackwood. Died in Afghanistan 2019. His unit was designated Reaper 7. Moreau's expression shifted slightly. This wasn't the direction he'd expected. So, you tattooed some dead relative on your arm, he said. But there was less confidence in his voice now. That's even weirder. He wasn't just some relative. A new voice cut through the conversation. Deep, authoritative. Everyone turned. Commander Julian Whitaker stood at the edge of the range, 50-something years old. Gray hair, eyes like a winter morning. The kind of man who'd seen enough combat to know the difference between heroes and people who talked about heroes. He'd been watching, listening. Now, he was walking toward Helena with slow, deliberate steps, his eyes fixed on her wrist, on the tattoo that had started all the trouble. The entire range held its breath as Commander Whitaker approached 24 recruits, 4 instructors, all watching as the most decorated officer on the base stopped directly in front of the woman they'd been mocking. He looked down at her tattoo. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He saluted her. The silence stretched like a held breath. Commander Whitaker held his salute for a full 5 seconds. Military perfect. The kind of salute reserved for fallen heroes and Medal of Honor recipients. Then he slowly lowered his hand. "Miss Blackwood," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet range, "would you step forward, please?" Moreau's face had gone pale. The other recruits shifted uncomfortably. Nobody was laughing anymore. Helena approached the commander, her expression carefully neutral, but her hands were shaking slightly. Whitaker studied her tattoo up close, his weathered fingers tracing the air above the faded letters without quite touching them. "Reaper 7, he said quietly. "Kia 2019. He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Do you know what your uncle did, Miss Blackwood?" Helena's voice was barely above a whisper. "He died serving his country. He did more than that." Whitaker turned to address the entire group. "Gather around, all of you, Arnie." The recruits formed a semicircle. Moreau hung back, but an instructor gestured him forward. This wasn't optional. Whitaker began to speak, and his voice carried the weight of lived experience. "Operation Silent Thunder, March 2019. I was Lieutenant Colonel Whitaker then, commanding the 75th Ranger Regiment's Charlie Company." He paused, looking each recruit in the eye. "We were tasked with evacuating a village in the Helmand province. Intelligence said we had a clean extraction zone. Intelligence was wrong. The only sound was the desert wind moving across the training range. Taliban had set up a complex ambush, 3 machine gun nests, RPGs. We were pinned down with 200 civilians, including families with children." Whitaker's eyes found Helena again. "That's when Reaper Team was called in. 7 special operations soldiers, the best of the best." He stepped closer to the group. "Staff Sergeant Maxwell Blackwood was Reaper 7, team demolitions expert. But more than that, he was the kind of soldier who understood that some missions require everything you have." Moreau found his voice. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't know because it's classified." Whitaker cut him off. "Reaper Team sacrifices are buried in files most people will never see. But the people they saved, they know." He gestured toward Helena's tattoo. "Your uncle and his team created a diversion that allowed us to evacuate those civilians. They drew enemy fire away from the extraction zone. All 7 of them." Whitaker's voice grew quieter. None of them made it out. The weight of that statement settled over the group like a physical presence. Staff Sergeant Blackwood could have retreated with the rest of us. He chose to stay. He chose to give his life so that 200 innocent people could go home to their families. Helena's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she stood straight. "The night before he died," Whitaker continued, "Maxwell Blackwood called me on the radio, said he had a niece back home, said she was the toughest person he knew, even though she didn't believe it herself." He smiled slightly. "He said she was quiet, but quiet didn't mean weak. He said she had the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself." Moreau stepped forward, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Sir, we didn't understand. I apologize." Whitaker nodded. "Apologies are a start, son, but understanding is better." He addressed the entire group again. "That tattoo isn't decoration. It's not a fashion statement. It's a memorial. Miss Blackwood carries the memory of 7 heroes who died so others could live." The commander reached into his pocket and pulled out a military challenge coin, worn smooth from handling. "This belonged to your uncle," he said, placing it in Helena's palm. "He asked me to make sure it found its way to you if anything happened to him." Helena stared at the coin. On one side was etched, "Reaper 7, strength in silence." "He knew you'd serve someday," Whitaker said. "He said it was in your blood, the quiet kind of courage that doesn't need recognition. He never told me. He didn't want to pressure you. But he hoped." Whitaker stepped back, addressing the group one final time. "Miss Blackwood doesn't wear that tattoo because she thinks it makes her look tough. She wears it because she carries the memory of soldiers who were tougher than any of us will ever be." He fixed Moreau with a steady gaze. "The next time you see someone with ink that tells a story, maybe ask what that story is before you decide it's worth mocking." Moreau nodded, shame clear on his face. "Yes, sir." "Miss Blackwood," Whitaker said, turning back to Helena, "your uncle would be proud of you, not because you're here trying to become a SEAL, but because you're here carrying his memory with dignity." He gestured toward her tattoo. Reaper Team's motto was "Strength in Silence." Looks like that runs in the family. The group began to disperse, but the mood had completely changed. Recruits who'd been laughing an hour ago now approached Helena with genuine respect. Dante Colombo, who started the phone recording, was the first to speak. Helena, I'm sorry. I deleted the video. All of it. Others followed quiet apologies, handshakes, the kind of respect that comes from understanding rather than fear. Moreau was the last to approach. He stood in front of Helena for a moment, struggling with words. I don't know how to make this right. Helena looked at him steadily. You don't mock what you don't understand. That's how you make it right. He nodded. My grandfather served in Vietnam. I should have known better. Now you do. As the training day ended, Helena found herself walking alone toward the barracks. The challenge coin felt warm in her pocket, a tangible connection to the uncle she'd lost and the legacy she carried. Commander Whitaker appeared beside her. He used to talk about you, you know, he said quietly. Said you were the reason he fought so hard to come home. He wanted to see the woman you'd become. Helena stopped walking. Do you think he would have been proud? Whitaker smiled. Miss Blackwood, you just turned humiliation into a lesson in honor. You showed strength without raising your voice. You let the truth speak for itself. He paused. That's exactly the kind of person Maxwell Blackwood died protecting. Yeah, he'd be proud. The tattoo on her wrist caught the evening light. Reaper 7 asterisk. No longer a source of shame. A badge of honor carried with the quiet strength her uncle had always seen in her. The next morning, something had changed in the barracks. Helena woke to find a handwritten note on her bunk. Simple military stationery. Moreau's handwriting. Helena, my grandfather's unit patch is in my footlocker. Purple Heart recipient, Vietnam 1969. I'd like you to have it not as an apology, as respect. Jonas, asterisk. She found the patch wrapped carefully in tissue paper first. Infantry Division, the big red one. A piece of history carried by someone who understood what service meant. At morning formation, Lieutenant Leclerc called the unit to attention. Yesterday, this training group learned an important lesson about assumptions, he announced, about the difference between mockery and respect. His eyes swept the assembled recruits. Effective immediately, we're implementing a new protocol. Anyone caught mocking military heritage, service records, or memorial tattoos will be removed from the program. Moreau stepped forward. Sir, request permission to speak. Granted. Kihi, sir. The recruits would like to establish something. A memorial corner in the common area for family members who served. Photos, patches, challenge coins, whatever people want to share. Leclerc nodded slowly. Approved, but it's voluntary. Nobody's required to participate. That afternoon, word spread quickly through the training facility. Recruits who'd never spoken about their military families began bringing items forward. Dante Colombo contributed his grandfather's Korean War service ribbon. Another recruit, Sophia Walden, brought a photo of her brother who died in Iraq. Even some of the instructors participated. Sergeant Theo Rousseau placed his father's Vietnam dog tags on the growing display. But the centerpiece was different. A simple wooden frame held a printed photo that Commander Whitaker had provided. 7 soldiers in desert camouflage, weapons ready, eyes alert. Below the photo, a brass nameplate. Reaper Team, Operation Silent Thunder. All gave some gave all. Asterisk Helena's Uncle Maxwell was third from the left, young face, confident smile, the kind of smile that said he believed he was coming home. The memorial corner became more than decoration. It became a reminder. During evening downtime, recruits would gather there quietly, not talking much, just acknowledging the weight of what they were trying to become. Moreau found Helena there one evening, looking at the Reaper Team photo. Do you think about them? He asked quietly. Every day. What do you think they want us to remember? Helena touched the challenge coin in her pocket. Strength in silence. That service isn't about proving how tough you are. It's about being tough enough to serve something bigger than yourself. Moreau nodded. I called my grandfather last night. First time in 2 years. Thanked him for his service. What did he say? That he didn't serve for thanks. He served so his family could live in a country worth living in. Other recruits began joining their quiet conversations, stories about family members who'd served, questions about what it meant to carry someone's memory forward. The training got harder, but the group dynamic had shifted. Instead of competing against each other, they started working together. understanding that they were all carrying someone's hopes forward. Commander Whitaker observed the change during his daily briefings. This group has learned something that usually takes months to develop, he told the instructors. Respect for the legacy they're trying to join. 3 weeks later, Helena passed her first major evaluation, not with the highest scores, but with consistency, steady performance under pressure, quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself, just like her uncle had always said. The tattoo on her wrist had stopped being something she hid. Now it was something that connected her to others who understood what carrying memory meant. Heritage marks. Commander Whitaker had called them badges of honor for those who remember the cost of freedom. I never asked anyone to believe in this tattoo. It wasn't meant for strangers. It was meant for me, a way to carry my uncle's memory when words felt too small for the weight of what he'd done. The day they laughed at it, I wanted to disappear, to pull my sleeves down and pretend it didn't exist. But you can't hide from honor. You can only choose whether to carry it with dignity. When Commander Whitaker saluted me, I understood something my uncle had tried to teach me years ago. He used to say, "Helena, strength isn't about making noise. It's about standing steady when the world tries to knock you down." I thought he was talking about playground bullies and high school drama. I didn't know he was preparing me for this moment, for the day when I'd have to choose between shame and pride, between hiding and standing. The night before Operation Silent Thunder, Uncle Maxwell called me. I was 19, working at my father's garage, convinced I wasn't built for anything important. "You know what I see when I look at you?" he said. "I see someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. That's rare, kiddo. Most of us spend our whole lives trying to convince the world we matter." "I don't feel strong, Uncle Maxwell." Strong isn't a feeling. It's a choice you make when everything else falls apart. 3 days later, he was gone. I got the tattoo at a parlor in town, nothing fancy, just his call sign and the date. The artist asked if I wanted color, a design, something prettier. I said no. Some things don't need decoration. Every morning in SEAL training, I touch that tattoo before I lace up my boots. Not for luck, for remembrance, to remind myself that I'm not just carrying my own dreams forward, I'm carrying his. Moreau asked me once if I ever regret getting it, if the mockery was worth it. I told him, mockery doesn't change truth. My uncle died a hero, whether people understand that or not. The ink on my wrist doesn't make his sacrifice more real, but it makes my memory of him permanent. The memorial corner in our barracks has grown more photos, more patches, more stories of people who gave everything so others could have the chance to serve. Sometimes I catch recruits staring at the Reaper team photo, trying to imagine what those 7 soldiers were thinking in their final moments. I know what Uncle Maxwell was thinking. He was thinking about coming home to tell me he was proud of who I become. He was thinking about the quiet strength he'd always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. He never made it home to say those words, but every day I choose to stand steady. Every time I carry his memory with dignity instead of shame, I hear them anyway. If this story touched you, follow to honor the silent legacies that still breathe among us.